Presented by Church Tech U, it's the ProPresenter Show. On today's show, how to transition from ProPresenter 6 to ProPresenter 7. Hi, and welcome again to the ProPresenter Show. This is the show where I help you learn all about ProPresenter. My name's Paul Allen Clifford. And before we get started, join the over 10,000 others who've subscribed, click the little bell icon, or just give me a thumbs up. Well, Renewed Vision, they announced that they are dropping support for ProPresenter 6. Now, before you get too concerned, that does not mean that ProPresenter 6 will quit working in January of 2023. It should still work. Before you get concerned, that does not mean that you have no choice but to either buy a new computer or switch to other worship software or anything like that. No. As long as you've got a computer that can run ProPresenter 6, it should run fine. In fact, some people say, well, I haven't had any problems with ProPresenter 6. Why would I upgrade? Well, you don't have to. If you haven't had any problems, then the fact that Renewed Vision isn't supporting it anymore, that shouldn't affect you because you don't have any problems. You reach out to support when you have problems. So keep that in mind. So now that I've talked you back down from the edge, you might, though, want to consider updating to ProPresenter 7. And if you are, I wanted to discuss some differences between the two pieces of software and answer some questions I get a lot about it. So let's head over to my computer and take a look. So first off, you'll notice I'm in ProPresenter 6 here. And you'll notice there's something poking out behind here, and that is ProPresenter 7. So that should answer your first question. Is it possible to run both ProPresenter 6 and ProPresenter 7 on the same computer? Yes, but there is a caveat. While it's possible to run them back and forth, so you could get used to ProPresenter 7 while you're running ProPresenter 6, you should know that ProPresenter 7, the later versions on the Mac at least, require a newer version of macOS than ProPresenter 6 was supported to run on. That said, I'm not on the latest version of macOS. You'll notice the date is December 1st, and Apple released a new version of macOS in, I think it was October of 2022. I'm not there yet because the supported version for ProPresenter 7 isn't available yet. But as soon as it is, I'll upgrade. But in the meantime, ProPresenter 6 may or may not work depending on which version of the OS you have. And if you upgrade, it could be that that causes problems. So keep that in mind. That's an important issue to just remember. Secondly, it's the case that you really shouldn't do what you see me doing right here. You should not run ProPresenter 6 and ProPresenter 7 at the same time. They're both kind of beefy applications, and unless you've got a really beefy computer, you're going to have problems if you do what I'm showing you how to do. So don't do this. This is more of a, I'm going to build my presentations in both and run it in one, and if I have a problem, restart the other, that kind of thing. Or build it in Pro6 and then try and build it in Pro7 with them on at different times. Things like that. That is a good way to use this situation. Okay, so that's the first thing. Second thing, you'll notice they look different. So this ProPresenter 6 has kind of a bright background, whereas ProPresenter 7, not so much. It's kind of a more dark background. That's not something you can change, so don't say, well, why does it have a dark background? I hate the dark background. You'll get used to it. It's not a big deal. So that's one thing. Another thing is you might notice that your toolbar up here looks totally different on your version of ProPresenter 6 than mine. There's a really good reason for that. in ProPresenter 6, you could arrange these icons however you wanted. In Pro 7, they don't have that feature, at least as of yet. So um, this is basically the layout you're going to get if you download ProPresenter 7. I think it changed in Pro 7.5 or later. So before that, these four in the middle down here were located up here. This wasn't up there, and this didn't exist at all, I don't think. That brings me to something else. You might be used to, with ProPresenter 6, you buy it, and it's pretty much the same. Occasionally, they might release a bug fix. On the rare occasion, there may be a feature that is added, but it's not a big deal. But with ProPresenter 7, that's no longer the case. Now with ProPresenter 7, they're doing feature releases multiple times a year, and they're doing bug fixes as needed for each of those feature releases. So there are more updates possible with ProPresenter 7. Something related to that is that it's no longer you buy it once and then you don't worry about it again until the next whole number release. There is something called ProPresenter Plus. Now, if you're in a situation where your church does not upgrade your software but every 3 years or so, maybe more. I talked to someone recently that was on ProPresenter 3 and updated to ProPresenter 7. If that's you, or you're on ProPresenter 5 and going to 7, or you bought ProPresenter 6 on the first day and you're just now thinking about updating to ProPresenter 7, you can absolutely just pay it the once and then don't worry about ProPresenter Plus again. You will lose support after a year, but you don't have to worry about it. Once you get one that's working, you can stick with that. What I'm doing and what my church is doing, so this isn't just Paul here, and a lot of churches are, ProPresenter Plus is less expensive than an entire upgrade. So it's kind of like you're just paying for that upgrade every 2.5 years or so. That's the amount of money we're talking about. So instead of having once every 3 or 5 years to pay for a larger chunk, you're paying a smaller chunk every year. And you get continued support with that. You get continued bug fixes. You get continued feature releases. So that's an important thing to know as well. One thing that has dropped between ProPresenter 6 and ProPresenter 7 is DVD support. Now, stop and think about it. When's the last time you bought a DVD? For most of us, it's been a while. When's the last time you bought a Blu-ray? For a lot of us, it's been a while. So there's a reason that that's not a thing anymore. As it turns out, the optical drives that used to ship with every single computer are optional now. And for some computers, they're not really even available. So keep that in mind. You can always rip a disk and play that video file in ProPresenter, but having a spinning drive, it's just not really as much of a thing anymore. I know that some Windows users, they make sure that they put in an optical drive in any new computer that they build, but it's kind of a thing of the past. And if you put in an optical drive and you put a DVD in there or a Blu-ray, chances are you're going to need additional software because that cost Microsoft money to put that in there, and so they just aren't putting it in there anymore. So it's not even the case that it's easy to play a DVD if you have an optical drive, because you need additional software. So that's something else to keep in mind. Another thing is if we go back into Pro6 and you go up here to ProPresenter Preferences and click on Modules here, you'll notice that we've got all these add-ons that you could buy. You can no longer buy any of these modules. And you might be thinking, but what if I need that to do MIDI, or what if I need to output over SDI? It's included. In fact, the most expensive one, the Alpha Key module, which was about $1,000 by itself, is included in every single copy of ProPresenter 7. So at the beginning of this tutorial, when you saw my lower third with my name on it, if you were watching the YouTube version, that was done live with a video switcher and some hardware from Blackmagic Design. If you have to say BMD, might be helpful for some of your churches, but special hardware that does that, and it's included. So it's not the case that you have to spend an extra $1,000 per computer that you want to do alpha on. Now it's all included. And the same thing for edge blending, master control, which is now called network link, multi-screen, SDI, communications, including MIDI, which is now available on Windows as well, and so on. That's also another thing that's great about this, is that MIDI is now available on Windows, and there are a few of the more esoteric communication protocols like Rosstalk or Global Cache that are not available on Windows, but almost no one uses those. So that is really the primary difference between Mac and Windows. In fact, the Windows version of ProPresenter 7 works so well that the problem that I have is, since I run the ProPresenter users community along with Renewed Vision, the wars between people on which is better, Mac or Windows. With ProPresenter 6, not as much, but more, and then ProPresenter 5 on back, when someone would come in and say, well, I've got ProPresenter on Windows, we'd say, oh, I'm sorry. No longer the case. They're virtually identical. In fact, I have on occasion when I've gone out to teach a ProPresenter class to a church, I find out if they're on Windows or Mac, and then I boot into Windows on my Mac, and then I just teach them from that, because it's pretty much identical, but it looks similar enough that they're gonna want to see how it looks in Windows. So I just do it in Windows. It's no different from my perspective. So if you're thinking, well, we absolutely used to have a Mac and we would really like Windows because everyone uses Windows all the time, then you can absolutely use Windows now. If your team prefers Windows, then use it. If your team prefers Mac, then use it. If you've got a new enough Mac that Pro7 runs great on it, no need to upgrade. And if you were on Pro6 for Mac, or for Windows rather, if you're on Pro6 for Windows, it could be that Pro7 is going to feel like it sings, whereas before maybe it was okay, but now it's just going to feel so much better. So that's something else to keep in mind about the two. Another thing I want to point out is another thing about the user interface. Before, the preview window was on the left, now it's on the right. Audio was up in the upper right hand corner, now it's down in the lower left hand corner. Before, there was a separate library and playlist area. Now they're combined into one. And well, basically, let me show you a quick overview of the user interface in ProPresenter 7. So we've got libraries up here. You can have multiple, and when you search, ProPresenter will search through all of them to find what you need. Notice I've got them separated by ministry and separated by type of content. You can have playlists and folders of playlists. So you see that. That's the same. Then we have the individual presentations in the playlists. And we've got the media layer down here. And under that, we've got video inputs. So that's the first column. In the middle, this should look very similar to you. This is, in fact, this is the slides area, and underneath that we've got either the video area, video input, if you've selected video input, or we've got the media area if you've selected that. Remember I told you that the audio playlist is down here in the lower right hand corner. Let me hide myself here real quick. So that's there. And now we have the preview up here. Since ProPresenter can do multiple outputs to multiple screens, we can change between each of those as previews. We've got the audience, the ones for the people that are participating in the worship experience or the meeting or whatever you're using ProPresenter for. And then we have the stage, which is for the people that are leading from the front. So we have those two types, and you can have multiples of those. I only have one stage added right now, but there's no reason why I couldn't add 2 or 3 of them. And maybe one is more musician focused, one is more for lyrics for the singers, etc. So that's different. I can control the other layers here. So this is my stage screen. So I could have, as I said, 2 or 3 of them here, and I can switch between layouts here. This is my timers and countdowns. Here's my messages, and here are my props. Then I also have macros. Now in ProPresenter 6, we had the ability to add cues to we had the ability to add cues to slides. But let's say you had to add 2 or 3 cues on each song and you did that every week. That could get tiresome. Now we have macros where you could save those. So if you have a lighting change, followed by a stage screen change, followed by, let's say that you want to start a timer, you could do that all automatically just by dragging a macro from here onto the slide. So that's a welcome addition as well. Notice that the clear buttons are not above here, they're to the right. The advantage of this is they're in layer order now, so that you can remember that, of course, there's the background color, and above that is the live video layer. Then we've got the media layer, then we've got the slides layer, then we've got a new layer specific for announcements. This would be great if you have TVs out in your lobby, vestibule, whatever you call it in your tradition, narthex. You could send announcement slides while you're doing other things in ProPresenter. So the announcement slides can keep running while the pastor or priest or whoever comes up and checks sermon notes, or while the worship minister or the worship leader, whoever does that, the minister of music, whoever, checks to make sure that the lyrics are all the same for the order that you're planning on doing that. That is a nice advantage of having the announcements layer. Now props and messages are split off into 2 layers instead of the one that they were in ProPresenter 6. That was added probably ProPresenter 7.4, 7.5, something like that. And then we have the audio layer, just because that could have just as easily been here or down here. We've got to clear the logo, etc. One other thing that we have in ProPresenter 7 that I was particularly really excited about was built-in live streaming. So with this button here, I can go into capture settings, and I could either with destination disk, I can save a copy of what is happening on ProPresenter in time. So basically a video recording of any one of my screens, or I could, if I wanted to change it to RTMP, I could live stream to Facebook, YouTube, or any other RTMP live streaming host. Or if I wanted to, I could go all the way and use Resi, which is a really high-end live streaming platform that started as Living as One, directed to the church market, but like ProPresenter, because it is so good, secular organizations started to use it. So they changed their name to Resi, because what does Living as One mean if you want to live stream? Doesn't have a good meaning. So they changed it to Resi, short for the special protocol that they use, which is the resilient protocol. So you've got that as an option, and that's something else. There are tons of new features in ProPresenter 7, and I just don't have time to go into them more, but I did want to give you an overview of the differences between ProPresenter 6 and ProPresenter 7. I probably even left some stuff out, but that is more of why I was really excited about ProPresenter 7. I was a beta tester before it was even announced, and it excited me almost immediately. And I was excited basically every new feature release. They release something, and I'm like, how did I live without that? That is incredible. And that's just more of what is so incredible about ProPresenter 7. I will say one other thing that just popped into my head about licenses. With ProPresenter 6, if you had a single seat or maybe a couple of seats, it was either Mac or Windows. You couldn't go back and forth. Well, with ProPresenter 7, you can. Now, it's not an automatic, whichever is the first computer to have the license, it grabs it anymore. But it's really easy to temporarily deactivate a license on a Windows machine and fire it up on the Mac, or vice versa, or Windows Windows or Mac Mac. So as long as they're not operating at the same time, you could absolutely have one seat that works in a couple of different locations. It might get frustrating after a while going back and forth, but that is something else that you can do now in ProPresenter 7 that you could not do in ProPresenter 6. And apparently I had a light that went out. Anyway, if you like this content, you really, today especially, you need to head over to my ProPresenter 7 Quick Start course. So head on over to TDM.fyi/pro, the number 7 quick, and give me your name and email address, and I'll make a login for you for free for that class so that you can learn even more about ProPresenter 7. Until next time, this is Paul Allen Clifford from TrinityDigitalMedia.com and ChurchTechU.com, reminding you to go out and change eternity.